Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our policy development meeting, especially about agriculture. Good evening, everyone. Just go through 2 or 3 formalities before we get into the main part of the meeting. Firstly, item 1, apologies, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillors Clayton, Wilson, and Gordon.
Thank you. Item 2 is any items brought forward as a matter of urgency. I have none to bring forward tonight. Item 3, declarations of interest.
I've received none, Chair.
Are there any from the members to declare tonight? No, thank you. Item 4 is to agree the agenda between Part A and Part B. There is no Part B. So we move now swiftly on to the format of the meeting. And I must run through some housekeeping items, and I'll be as quick as I can, but there is to bear with me. Welcome to councillors, officers, expert panel members, members of Torwich District Council and members of the public to the special meeting of the Policy Development Committee to discuss agriculture in North Devon. Reminder, please switch your mobile phones to silent. Now, please ask those attending virtually to switch off your microphone to avoid any disruption during the meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the Council's YouTube channel. Please be aware that the purpose of this meeting is part of a fact-finding exercise to enable councillors and members of the public to be fully aware of the current situation regarding agriculture. I would therefore politely request that anyone who addresses the committee or panellists to avoid making any political statements, only ask direct questions, and that we keep to the schedule detailed on the front pages of the agenda. Reminder for councillors, A, to ensure that those attending virtually can hear the proceedings and for the recording to capture the entire meeting, please ensure that you project your voice and speak clearly. Please remember it's a formal meeting and therefore do not refer to each other by first names. Members of the public, we are pleased to welcome members of the public to this special meeting. As advised, parts of the meeting will be recorded by the press. As stated on the front pages of the agenda, at approximately 7:40 p.m, I will suspend staff orders to allow opportunity for members from Torwich District Council and the invited public to ask questions. The committee will then reconvene at 8:20 to consider actions and next steps. If you wish to ask a question at a point where I suspend standing orders, members from Torwich District Council and the invited public will have the opportunity to ask questions and must indicate their wish to speak by raising their hand. I will then invite you to stand and you'll be given the opportunity to present your question to the panellists. Given that there are likely to be a number of members of the public who wish to ask questions and with limited time available, please ensure that you just ask a question and refrain from making any additional comments. We will do our best to get through as many of the public questions as we can within the time available this evening. To ensure that this is possible, your cooperation would be very much appreciated. If, however, we do not manage to ask all the questions arising, we will make sure they are submitted to the panel after the meeting, and any responses will be sent to your email address, which we would ask that you provide to us at the close of the meeting. The timings for the meeting have been arranged to ensure that the committee members, members from Torwich District Council and the invited public have an equal and fair opportunity to address the panellists. Please remember that this is a formal committee meeting and it is important that respect is shown to the chair, the invited panellists, officers and each other at all times. Anyone who does not respect these rules or behaves in an offensive or inappropriate manner will be asked to leave the meeting. Thank you. I will now hand over to Councillor Liz Bullitt as Group Lead on Agriculture, and she will outline the procedures of the meeting and ask the panel to introduce themselves and do a brief summary of their situation, and also for the District Council officers to introduce themselves. So I hand over to Liz Bullitt.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Right. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see so many councillors and members of the public here who are interested in this topic. I just want to briefly fill in the context as to the reason for this meeting. Last year, we on the Policy Development Committee discussed what topics we thought needed airing and discussing that affect the North Devon community, which, as a council, we could take forward. The first was a controversial one concerning water delivery and perceived pollution. This meeting was very well attended and brought up matters which are now being taken further by the council. A meeting discussing dentistry issues will take place later in the year. Agriculture was brought up because, as most of you know, farming is going through probably the biggest transition in financial backing since the Second World War. I personally was pleased to be asked to lead this group, having farmed all my life, including a long period in agricultural research, followed by working with my husband in livestock sales across the UK and international export. We thought this meeting would be important to flag up to not only our council, but also the general public, the important role farming plays in the North Devon economy as a whole and the challenging facing it. You know, tourism and everything is part and parcel of what we do. Payment of subsidies to farmers has moved from the previous payments to offset the desire for cheaper foods to compensate farmers for income foregone. This is now changed to financial payments to farmers on the basis of public money for public good. These new SFI and CS scheme payments have taken some time developing, as you know, but are basically, to put simply, to improve and protect the environment, support food production, and improve productivity for the benefit of all. The prime purpose of farming remains to be the production of food. I think you will all agree that without that we cannot survive to deal with all our other problems such as climate change. With current international unrest and threats, self-sufficiency in food production is even more important, especially as currently we are only some 55% self-sufficient. However, farmers will always adjust their farming methods to what is imposed on them, and will now, as long as there is sufficient financial incentive, as they're all after all running a business. Without farmers on side, I'm sure you will agree that a lot of the potential greening and environmental issues cannot be achieved here in North Devon. We've got together a very big panel of local stakeholders who, although in some cases are also farming, they deal with North Devon farmers on a daily basis in a professional capacity. So they've all got a strong knowledge of the needs going forward. I hope you all read their written submissions to the questions we've asked them on the agenda. As mentioned by the chairman, I have to point out that since yesterday's announcement that this meeting is not to be conducted on the party political lines, but to be a cross-party discussion on our vital farming industry in North Devon, please. Is that right? So now I will shut up and ask the panel to very briefly introduce themselves and perhaps add comments to their they've already submitted on their written submissions.
I suppose I better start at my end then. Thank you, Liz, very much. Not sure whether I need that. I've got a dog that doesn't listen, so I operate the same approach when speaking to people. Robin Milton, I'm a district councillor, only for the last 12 months. A farmer, Edge of Exmoor, North Devon and West Somerset area, I have to admit. A few other interests. I deputy chair of the Exmoor National Park Authority. I've been a board member of the Devon Local Nature Partnership for a good many years. My son is actually the farmer. he pays me to do all these odd jobs, which keeps me well occupied, I think. Alongside that, I've been involved with the local nature recovery strategy development through Devon Local Nature Partnership. I am a member of the NFU's National Uplands Forum and have been for a very long time, and sit on the Devon CLA committee. I'm also a fellow of the Royal Agricultural Societies. It's unprecedented change at the moment, and I think the scale of policy change in the rural economy is unprecedented for what, 75 years? It would have been the 1947 Agricultural Acts that probably changed things to this extent the last time around. So we're heading into a very new world, and I think there's a real challenge here to try and make sure that we engage everything that we have with both the urban and the rural economies to make sure they are mutually beneficial to each other. I think very much the rural economy can be very much understated, and its contribution to what we have in North Devon understated otherwise. So I look forward to the discussion. I won't elaborate any more on what I've said. Hopefully the discussion will bring that out.
Thank you, Robin. I think following that, I might as well pack up and go home.
I don't think so.
I'm David Chubb. I'm NFU Devon Deputy Chairman. We farm Lowland Sheep Farm on the midway between Barnstable and Ilfracombe, predominantly sheep, and we've got our farm into mid-tier stewardship, which we're in our second year of our second round. And so, yeah, we are doing some things like herbal lays and creating hedgerows, etc., etc.
Good evening. My name is Graham Wilcock. I work for North Devon Plus. I am their agricultural facilitator, and basically I work under a program called the Future Farming Resilience Program. I've seen well over 400 farms now, all around Devon, so getting experience of lots of farms and lots of problems. What we want to tell you is that there is some support. A lot of farmers going through this change and they're feeling that they're on their own. There is some funding there to enable you to actually talk about some of the issues and the change that you are going through. And we can help you go through some of those changes. Do you go through countryside stewardship? Do you go through SFI? What's the best way to go? What's the benefits of putting in a herbal lay against more lagoons, etc.? So just to let you know that there is some support there, really. You know, we are hand-holding some of the applications through to application stage. But more importantly, as working for North Devon Plus, we're trying to look at the rural economy as well. Farmers, you know, spend locally, support 20 to 25 local businesses. If you don't spend and your BPS goes down, those businesses will be severely affected as well. So it's more important that we get the rural economy going and you replace your BPS payments with some of the SFI or countryside stewardship to keep that rural economy going. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Sally Ann Bloomfield. I am the Deputy Director at Land Centre Professional Limited. We're a firm of chartered surveyors in South Molton. We have quite a wide client base from nearly 1,000 clients, ranging from 2 acres up to 10,000 acres. We try and keep abreast of all the changes that drop into our email box on a regular basis, and then get the phone goes crazy for long periods of time. But everything that Graham's said, we try and help with the FFI agreement this year and how it all ties in with planning and requirements. So every time that there's a change with some of these agreements, and there's some grant funding, so some concreting and building, of course you then get tapped into the planning side of things. So there is funding available, but there's also a lot of complex issues that stack up on top. And from our perspective as surveyors, there's a missing element of funding that could help, or a missing element of support.
Excuse me, do you mind using the mic?
Oh, sorry.
People
Can people hear? Yeah. So there's an element of support that's missing to help people between the layers of grant funding and then topping up to where they need to go. There's a lot of changes and NVZ requirements. We're looking now, I think, moving towards 6 months of slurry storage that people need. That is huge lagoons in certain situations, and trying to get planning when there's all of the different complexities involved with doing that often causes lots of issues for our clients. So yeah, it's challenging time for farmers in all sorts of ways. There's funding out there, but it's the additional bits that are going to cost private money.
Thank you. I'm Ian May. I'm the chair of the Exmoor Hill Farming Network. We're a small 1.5 full-time employee community first company. Offices Reading Cross, covering the whole of Exmoor and beyond. We regularly have contacted over 700 individuals across the greater Exmoor area and over 400 rural businesses. We provide training support, signposting. We often facilitate meetings to help engagement between farmers and government or national park or other NGOs. Our main area of work is we have 3 peer support peer groups. One called Women in Farming, meeting on a regular basis, helping each other, community-based sharing of knowledge. Next generation, young farmers and young people working in the rural enterprise, and then a forward farming group looking at new technologies, grants and
Good evening, everybody. I'm Andrew Bell, the director of the UNESCO Biodiversity Reserve here in Dublin. Covers everything from Exmoor and Dalmore, 12 miles beyond London. There's not much farming happens 12 miles beyond London. So we'll keep the conversation short tonight. So our organisation has a partnership with about 34 organisations that work right across the state of Britain on the patch, and includes working with landowners in particular, so I can on the partnership as well, and how we sort of programs and projects to make land more sustainable. And that episode is quite a large conversation in itself. We're certainly interested in working with farmers because farms don't just produce food, but actually how we can our stewards for all the environmental goods and benefits that we all receive, whether it is soil attenuation, carbon sequestration, biodiversity, etc. And in fact, the farms can't exist without those processes in their own life. So we're very keen to work with landowners to make the best of those. How we do that with supporting the agri-environment schemes that come through. We work with developing new ways of transporting that, through that to capital markets, for example. We'll give that advice as well. But also we're interested in the tech side because we're looking at ways to help reduce, improve the positive things of farms, so we can reduce the negative side in terms of pollution, that sort of. So we can actually help monitor and measure so that agriculture doesn't get hit so often as it often is, or the pollution events happen. So we've actually helped the landowners reduce that. So we're trying to reduce the risk and the liabilities, improve the opportunities, to make sure those functions are driven. So there is a kind of share and spare approach to the natural systems that we need and how the farms can actually use those as stewardship.
Good evening, everybody. Pete Delbridge from who farms on the top of Exmoor, sheep farmer. Was a big farmer up to about 12 months ago when I sold all the cows out. So just 700 ewes running now. And been farming there, whole family, for 6 generations when it was enclosed off the moor in around about 1850. So nobody else has ever lived in a whole house except Delbridges. But also, apart from sheep farming, I'm a non-executive director for Moll Valley Farmers. For those of you who are not shareholders and don't know, we are owned by 9,000-ish shareholders, predominantly in the southwest, but not exclusively. We have a turnover of just over £600 million and employ roughly 700 people. Again, across the country, but not exclusively. And 300 of them would be employed in North Devon, so and our sites at Parfields, at HQ, and Woodbridge. So that give you a flavour. We supply Like about 70% of our income or our turnover would be to agricultural businesses and agricultural households, so very entwined in the rural economy.
Thank you, Edward. Can you hear me now? No?
I can hear you anyway. Liz, you did public speaking. We don't need a microphone.
I want to enunciate clearly, everybody. Hello, right, let's go. Right. Now I'll go on to just ask the, everyone here on the front desk to introduce themselves and say what their part on the council are.
Hi, I'm Kelly Stanley. I'm the part of the Policy Development Committee of Devon Council.
I'm Liz Spear, I'm Chair of Policy Development Committee.
Hi, I'm John Tremont. I represent Newton Limit Board and I'm the Vice Chair.
Evening everyone, my name is Ken Miles, I'm the Council's Chief Executive.
Evening everyone, I'm John Triggs, I'm the Council's Director of Resources and Deputy Chief Executive.
Evening, I'm Dominique, I'm the Economic Development and Regeneration Manager at North Devon Council.
So now we will move on to the next part of the meeting, where we allow some follow-up questions from our committee. So I'm addressing just the committee of North Devon, our policy development. So any questions they'd like to follow up?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Even though I represent a board that's primarily agricultural, I know very little about it. My knowledge, I stand out in this as being deeply ignorant. But I know that the point of the meeting here today is to find out how our councils can best help the agricultural sector face all the multitude of challenges that are being thrown at them day after day. So my first question really is about what we actually can, as a council, do in terms of finance. Perhaps I can ask the council officers.
Thank you, Councillor Petunias. Yes, it's great timing this evening as I can sit here before you today and announce that we have actually reopened the second tranche of our Rural Business Grant Scheme. This is coming through the Rural England Prosperity Fund, and both North Devon and Torridge councils are actually part of this scheme. It is being administered through North Devon Plus, so you may well get to speak to Graham in due course about the scheme. It's really aimed at increasing prosperity, jobs, and opening up new innovations within the agricultural and rural community at large. Grants are available between 2,500 up to 35,000. We've lowered the need for match funding to, so it's between 10 to 20% this time, so that's the contribution you would put in yourself to match the grant. The details are all on the North Devon Plus website. The application form is live as of this evening, so please do go and have a look at that one. If you'd like to take away some information, I'm not sure there's enough leaflets, but my colleague is standing in the far side of the room there demonstrating, and there are a stack of leaflets there, so please do take one away with you. It does have a QR code or the website address, or there is a telephone number if you'd like to speak to somebody further about what's available. But PAM is open to farming community, rural communities, social enterprises. The only area in the whole of North Devon and Torridge that is excluded is Barnstaple, because that's deemed to be an urban settlement under the DEFRA guidelines. The only caveat I would give, particularly to the audience tonight, if you are in receipt of certain DEFRA funds already, you may not be eligible to apply for this one. So if you're in any doubt, I would suggest you use the email or telephone number and just check that with the office before you start making an application. I'll be around this evening if there's any time at the end, so if anyone's got any quick questions they want to fire at me, then I'm happy to take those on a one-to-one.
We have, sorry, Oriana, we've all introduced ourselves except for you. Oriana is vital tonight. She doesn't realise it, but she is. She's the one with the roving mic, and she is one of our member staff that, what's it called? Is it Corporate and Community Services? Thanks, Oriana. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Matthew Bushell, Southampton, also working with her, so cover a lot of the rural area. And as a hinterland parish, the situation with farming obviously concerns me. I would like to ask the panel if they could elaborate on the multiplier which is given from subsidies to farmers, which would benefit the local economy. And also perhaps whether you'd like to comment on the statement which I'm hearing from farmers far and wide. Grants are all well and good, but without thought out farmer subsidies, the cash flow doesn't exist to benefit from them.
I leave it up to the panel for them to decide, to volunteer who would like to start off and answer that.
I think it's Graham quoted the multiplier, wasn't it?
You might be me.
It's normally an NFU quote.
I think I might be asking the NFU for some help as well. I mean, it is confusing, and that's why we are employed, to try and sort out the plethora of information and grants out there that best suits. Now, we don't actually go into a farm and say, you must do something. You know, the SFI is actually that flexible that you can actually decide what's best for you. You know, so you can actually go field by field or hedge by hedge and decide whether you want to trim it, whether you want to establish more mature trees in it, whether you want to do the conditioning. It's entirely up to you. Where countryside stewardship was a slightly more dictatorial program, let's say, and I think that's where the stigma of where some of the farmers I go into still say you're coming from the ministry. Well, the ministry went in 2002, but still, you know, the fear factor of what the ministry did, etc., and our role, and I think, you know, agents like Land Sense and everyone else are there trying desperately to try and get over that fear factor of where, you know, there are no fines, no penalties, etc. with SFI. You just don't get paid. You know, so there is some more flexibility there. You can apply for countryside stewardship and you can top it up with SFI. So there's some anomalies there that people are saying that you can't. There are certain offers within SFI that you can add to a countryside stewardship agreement. So that's our role really is to look at that on an individual basis, one-to-one, confidential, to try and ensure that, you know, each farmer has got the best offers or best options for them to consider. We certainly won't dictate to them about what they really want to do, or it's up to them, and it is their decision making. I don't know if Sarah wants to.
Yeah, so what I would add to that is that some of the higher paying options, one in particular, the unharvested zero headland, you get over £1,000, I guess £1,129 a hectare for planting in the field and then not harvesting it. And you have to ask yourself the question, how does that help agriculture in North Devon? It helps the landscape, it helps wildlife and biodiversity, and there is a place for everything, but there have been no restrictions on the amount of land which we put in until recently. So there, I would say from our perspective, from clients' perspectives, is that there are options available and some of them are being paid for what you do already, which is an ideal situation. But if you want to top up your money to levels that pre-subsidy, BPS, etc., you probably have to make a change to what you're doing, and you probably have to take land out of agricultural management to do it.
I'm also joined the SFI pilot, and that's been in for 2 years now. And it's got to be said that I would agree with Gwen. The sea change in attitude from DEFRA over the SFI has been quite remarkable. It's from being a draconian almost when you get inspected. If you're out on a meter on your hedge, you get penalised left, right, and centre. Whereas the guys that are running the DEFRA officials that are running the SFI are there to help you deliver results. In fact, and I've got to say they've been very engaging and very helpful. So that's the one thing that I would like to have in SFI terms. The other thing is, we mentioned about inputs, and I was always told as a youngster by my grandparents that a lot of people hang off a cow's tail, and that saying means that a lot of people are employed in ancillary industries that supply farmers. So once you put in your GS4, believe it or not, it's low input. You don't need to put any more inputs in. So the people that are servicing those inputs are not required. So that's where we will see a drop in employment in the ancillary industries, downstream or upstream, whichever it is, going forward.
Yes, so to add to the previous comments, and on the back of what Peter just said about inputs, as I said to you earlier, we're in environmental stewardship where we've grown a lot of herbal lays. So unfortunately for Mole Valley, we don't need very much fertiliser, nothing really. So we're cutting out that expense. And to be quite honest, with the way farming's gone and farming incomes of late, if it wasn't for these grants and stewardship, etc., and the revenue that generates, the green fields around North Devon certainly wouldn't look quite so green, because to have them looking nice and green and the countryside looking like it does come at a big cost. Coupled with the stewardship, there's obviously grants available for, because obviously some sectors are under more pressure to bring up their infrastructure, especially dairy farmers, and there are grants available to bring that up. So you involves the Environment Agency, Natural England, but ultimately it does involve the planning department as well, and that that is stumbling block on sometimes. We got to bear in mind that, especially with the dairy sectors, well, all sectors, you just can't turn the tap on and off like that. You can't stop production. It takes so many years to get back into the cycle. It's not something you can turn on and off. The timing is of the essence. So if the Environment Agency coming into a farm and saying you need to do X, Y, and Z, that business is at risk because it has to be done quick. And the flaw in the system, unfortunately, can be planning system taking too long.
Just a couple bits there, maybe not quite as specific. I was just going back to Matt's question around the multiplier there, and that was quoted. And I mean, I know the multiplier effect from money that goes into agriculture is quoted at varying different levels, somewhere between 1 to 5 or 1 to 7, that sort of area. That's probably the best return on investment a government can have on any of its money. There'd be very few places that it could spend £1 to stimulate 7 in the local economy. And I think that's the bit we have to recognise and have to be careful that the changes don't become so significant that we lose that value in the economy. Just a quick calculation in my head. Now, Peter down at the end there suggested, £600 million turnover for Mole Valley farmers. If you look at that from a multiplier point of view, that's a heck of a lot of money washing around in the rural economy, isn't it, really? If 70% of it comes from agricultural businesses, which he said roughly, that's 400 odd million a year of just that company's turnover. So you look at every other company, every machinery dealer, every supermarket, every car dealership, every truck dealership, and so on. That is what keeps our local economy rolling. And I think we have to make sure that we have a balance between food production and environmental delivery, but that is sustainable in the long term for that rural economy. Because if we lose one sector, it's a very long time to try and move anything back to a productive capacity. There isn't enough spare in it. And just to put a perspective for those people that may not have been involved, DEFRA's own figures these are. Grazing livestock last year in England showed a 5% increase in their return on grazing livestock. These are DEFRA's figures produced as of 14th of March this year. Their projections for 22-23, 23-24 using the current figures, a 5% increase. The gross farm business income for a lowland beef and sheep farm is £23,000. That is the return on investment for all the capital you've employed in that business, plus the return to the unpaid family labour and yourself as the owner. Quite frankly, that puts you well below the minimum wage. And I think the sustainability of those businesses are frighteningly at risk at those sort of levels. That's quite enough from me.
Councillor Bushell, if it's very brief, please. Yes, you may.
I think all the panel will understand that the banks have not been favourable towards farming and the flexibility towards borrowing. This has a knock-on to cash flow. Do we believe that the banks are loaning less money out because the subsidies aren't likely to be there to the extent they have been, and therefore they're concerned about repayment of these loans? I've read government documents which have said that they suggest that farmers can sell fields to keep themselves viable, and to me that doesn't seem sensible, because if you can't get the economies of scale in the fields you've got, less fields is going to make it less viable.
Yes, on the back of what you said, Councillor Bushell, I do firmly believe, I think we're in a different scenario now from where we were a few years ago with the banks. From what I'm picking up, whereas a few years ago they would loan up a certain percentage up to your asset base, now it's down to serviceability. That is the problem. As Councillor Milton said just now, that the incomes are not brilliant, and serviceability is a problem. So yes, I think low borrowing from banks is becoming more and more difficult.
Just following on from the banks issue, there's also, as you know, there's money for lots of grant funding, but if it goes over £50,000, and £50,000 sounds a lot of money, but when you're dealing with important infrastructure, things that the EA requires you to do, concreting, roofing overs, stopping dirty water, £50,000 doesn't go very far. And all above, everybody that goes over £50,000 in grant has to get it signed off by their accountants to say that they can support that level of funding. So we're being hit in different ways.
Thank you.
And just to add to that, the grant funding comes in arrears, so you have to, for a cash flow problem, you have to, if you're filling in, as long as it's a fencing or hedging or doing the work, you have to do the work, spend money, and then claim money by 2 months' time.
Thank you for that. I now have Councillor Lever followed by Councillor Jones, please.
Thank you very much. Peter Lever, I'm District Councillor for Barnstaple and Westcott. So it's got 2 fields in the Waterston, not an agricultural area. There's lots of suggestions as to the different functions that North Devon's farmland can take, from water catchment areas, providing sites for renewable energy, offsetting biodiversity loss from development. And I'm just interested in the panel's views on a model of land use that's multifunctional. I mean, bearing in mind that North Devon is at the moment reviewing its local plan, and it'd be interesting to know how, you know, what you think of having a piece of land providing several different functions.
Who would like to start off? Andy?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Leader. Yes, we've always felt that it is a multi-use thing, and it always has been. Well, since we started farming that, because it always has been multiple things coming off that, we just don't really recognise. Excuse me. So when it came to the different 25-year environmental plan, we started looking at things from that. What else does nature give us from the land? And it's decided that, you know, as well as the food it produces, it's the carbon sequesters, the water retentions, the purification bit, all of those different things that happen on the land actually outstrip in terms of values to the public when it comes from the food production that goes on there. That's not to say that food production shouldn't happen, it just means we should recognise all those other benefits as well. And they should be rewarded back to the farmer for keeping those in good condition, provided they are kept in good condition. That would be the premise of the change, going from, you know, public money for public goods. I don't think the public money for those public goods is actually anywhere near enough because of, you know, the volumes of benefits that are actually coming from it. So, if anything, I would say increase and subsidy for those good practices, those good services in there. The policy that has been sort of developed in terms of trying to bring in private markets and private finance, green finance, carbon, etc., to pay for change. So if you've been a good farmer in the past, you're actually being penalised because you can't pay for bigger change to get that big investment to come in. So, you know, if you've got lots of carbon in your soil already, then you can't suck any more in it. You're not going to get a carbon payment to make more carbon in there, it's just not moving. So that's a real dilemma we need to try and work around is how do we want to pass good practice that's actually going to work for more land that penalise those farmers. But in terms of sort of that whole land use change, we heard talking earlier on about where I grew up, really the estates up in the northeast, they're taking back a lot of land because the carbon payments for the peat so good. But, you know, lots of the farmers off the land. Well, peat is quite a special habitat. You need to kind of really think about it that hard. So it's the sites where you think we need to do something that is more special than that. And then there's more regular sites who say, well, actually, there's opportunity to share the land a bit more really to the farmer and the private, and use a bit of tech to actually protect the environment, but still get good returns on the farming itself. So I think agriculture needs to think wider than food. It needs to think about those whole environmental goods and services and benefits, including food. And we think about that as their market, and that's how we can extend the value across all those benefits.
thanks, Andy. Anyone else?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Leader, for your question. Multifunctional land use, I think it's certainly worth mentioning that, you know, in North Devon we have the uplands, we have the lowlands, and obviously it's not every farmer that can have access to multifunctional land use. It's not every farmer that can diversify. Where we are, we've got multifunctional land use. But you mentioned renewable energy, and yes, depends what type of renewable energy you want to do. You know, obviously you've got solar panels, wind turbines, etc., etc. But there comes, you know, I know farmers that want to go into renewable energy by solar panels on their roofs, etc., etc. But the stumbling block there is the grid capacity. The grid capacity is full in North Devon, and there's not much likelihood of it altering anytime soon.
Yeah, and just to add to that, with the multiple land uses, and there's a bit of an issue that some of these things only are only interesting at scale, so small scale farmers haven't got the opportunity to engage with them in the same sort of way. So if you're looking at offsetting or if you're looking at carbon credits and things, companies are only really interested in bigger areas. There's also at the moment things like biodiversity net gain are in their very early days. There are obviously huge long-term commitment. So the biodiversity net gain is 30 years, carbon is longer, potentially longer. And so this has got a huge impact on your children, succession. It also has an impact on your asset value, so the value of your farm. So potentially, if you're looking to pass it on to sell it, then these are things that people are kind of confronting with. Am I starting my children or grandchildren by going into this in the next short time? Whereas if you're looking at deferred grants and things, they're usually 5 or 10 years, which is a much more amenable time frame that we make decisions.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Jones, please.
Thanks. Peter Jones, I'm councillor for Whitbridge. And I've got lots of questions. Which one have I got to go for? A simple one, really. I've had lots of conversations with Robin about this. And obviously, where I'm based, I've got family and lots of friends connected to our economy, farming. The changes that are taking place right now, in simple terms, is North Devon going to be better off or worse off? And I'm going to say that in the rural economy and also those actually involved in farming. And should we be concerned?
There's an impossible question, quite honestly. That's like crystal ball gazing, isn't it, Peter? I think there's opportunity, and there's huge opportunity out there at the moment. But we're in this very grey area at the moment, not helped, of course, by the announcements of yesterday, with a whole heap of policies been thrown out in the last week, and then having to try and decipher them during the course of what goes on over the next 6 weeks, and people planning their businesses. But yes, there is quite a lot of opportunity. The whole land use strategy has developed, and it is always clouded by government policy, whichever one's in place, or long-term policies, whatever support people will tend to lean towards. We've got the added thing at the moment of private finance, as mentioned there, which is a whole new challenge for an awful lot of farming businesses, especially at a small level, which is where the purpose of some of like the landscape recovery approaches come in, and attempting to pull groups together. North Devon Biosphere has been doing this for a very long time, quite honestly, to try and collaborate approaches. It's not going to be an easy one. I don't think there's anything to say that we're going to be better or worse off, but with the right advice and the right opportunities taken, and potentially the right links with the likes of the planning system and our local plan, we've got to capitalise on whatever value the likes of biodiversity net gain can give us. If we're going to be able to develop anything around the populated areas, let's make sure with that value is offset into the rural areas. We get a double gain for the economy in North Devon then, rather than a single one. Much better than offsetting it to a bit of rainforest in the Amazon that you're never quite sure whether somebody's going to deliver on.
Can I just, on that one, I think, there's always going to be winners and losers with the great schemes, and it all depends on how the farmer reacts to change. A lot of farmers are fifth generation, don't want change, always had 100 cows, will always keep 100 cows regardless. But when you get down to the nitty gritty and you take that basic payment scheme out, they're actually losing money. And it's getting down to that nth degree with them and actually identifying that their business model is not right. And therefore that they do have to do some changes. And therefore, we mentioned about selling land, that 7-acre field may have to go at some point in time if they don't change. There are some opportunities, some of the dairy farmers will put in some herbal aids and will probably come off a little bit better than their BPS. So, those that are prepared to do a little bit of change and look at their business model, may actually be winning, and there may be more benefits to the local economy. Some of the older generation that don't like change may suffer.
It would be fair to say as well, as we stand at the moment, it could be better, it could be worse. I have this feeling as a more purely agricultural area, we wouldn't be slightly worse off. But one thing is for sure, as uncertainty that we're currently in for the next, as of now, for the next 18 months, 2 years, is driving short-term behaviour, which is not, you know, we actually wait for the trees for that. Once it settles down, we might know the answer to your question, to be honest. But at the moment, you know, I mean, such as we've almost got a couple of schemes in the pipeline for solar panels, which could be a couple of £1 million. But they could be eligible for FETF. Farmers said, well, hang on to that, and just wait and see. So that's just putting a kibosh on the pipeline. You know, quite economic work.
That's what it is. I think we may be looking at this slightly the wrong way as well. I think most farmers that we work with, ideally they want to make their money as farming. They want to be paid a good price for what they produce, and they have so much pride in what they do. Actually, are you farming for farming, or are you farming for subsidies? So, yeah, are they better off or worse off? But how do you qualify what is better or worse off? Is it financially or mentally, or, you know, pride in your job and what you do?
Yes, Jones, on the back of what has been said, very difficult question to answer, but I think it's worth bearing in mind in North Devon, we are, you know, with all the farms in North Devon, there's not one size fits all. There's, you know, there's hardly two farms alike, you know, and obviously we do have to bear in mind that everything is climate, you know, the weather. So, you know, as we all know, it's not exactly been very dry up until the last fortnight. We've had 6-7 months of intense rain, and, you know, from my point of view on our business, we're predominantly sheep. Yes, I'm not saying sheep is not making a good price at the moment, but the devastating impact of the weather on the back of that is we could financially be worse off this year than what we were last year because of the lamb losses so dependent on the weather.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Petrinos.
Yeah, thanks. A lot of the stuff that's been described is clearly problems for the agricultural sector, but it's not stuff that we as district council can influence because it's beyond our grasp. It's far too big. What if you? I know you've been asked this question and you've got it on, you know, your replies on the agenda. But if there was big away magic wand and get the district council to do one thing, what would it be?
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Petrinos. If I may, there might be just more than just one thing. So a couple, 2 or 3 very quick things. Obviously, we talked about the grants, and the flaw in the grant system means a planning. There's goes to planning, and unfortunately, and this isn't this isn't not just North Devon. This is, you know, countrywide. It's the planning system. These planning applications are getting stalled. The farmers are on a very tight timeline, especially dairy boys, to get their infrastructure in place. Otherwise, they risk their business closing down. So, you know, if you've got the Environment Agency coming in saying we do have the authority to close you down, we have the power to close you down, they've got to put in infrastructure. That's a big thing. Obviously needs planning, and time is not of the essence. And the only other thing I would say that the council could do is, in terms of food, plug buying local as much as possible. At the very least, buying British.
Thank you.
I can just follow up on the planning side of things, so we do a lot there. I have to commend the council on the planning document that they did in conjunction with Torridge Council, that was published in January, that has opened up and is recognising the challenges that are faced, farmers face. But there's always a background difficulties. So in terms of like, I think we've covered a little bit of the planning, but one thing that we come across in planning is Section 106 agreements and houses and tying things to land. We understand the reason that it's there, and it's obviously very important that it's there. But when you appreciate that if you're putting a house for a young family who are in the farming industry, it's costing a lot of money, then if you tie it with the Section 106 agreement, you get hit with 20%. The 106 effectively, you can't claim back the VAT element, and that hits them with another 20%. I think if we could maybe have a look at that element, because that extra 20% is a huge amount of money. And then the other one thing that I would look at is potentially a lot of public awareness around livestock worrying. That creates devastating effects to clients. The general public have no concept, generally, of how devastating it is for farmers. Maybe they see it as just one sheep. That is somebody's livelihood. That is so important to that person that I think we really need to be really, really hot on when people can, when and where people can go and where. And there's short periods of time where people have to respect that public access may have to be defined to allow agriculture and public to mix in the same areas.
I would add from Malcolm, I think sort of David must be reading my shoulders because they're exactly the same stuff. It is about being easier and much more consistent on the planning side to allow those solutions to be put in place for whether it's storage stores or whatever. But even when we sort of do the work with the environment schemes online, is you need an innovation team to upon, which it should be something that kind of allows us to just put it in there and look at the threshold. It was to be a massive delay, yeah, but I think the size of the pond would need to be something to look at some of those ideas which are easier. And the other one again is that public procurement and also the support of the value-added and the processing of food and forestry products. I'll speak as a forester now, in terms of how we can actually get those produce made and valued locally and used locally. And that's going to be, well, that goes to the people who are accounting, as Peter was saying earlier on. So those sort of things will really sort of drive the economy more better than we go from.
Yeah, in my response, I did say that perhaps you should consider an alternative for community tax on the young people once they've owned the rural housing, because rural housing is a problem, and succession in farming is a huge problem that we're facing, probably the biggest problem that we actually face at the moment. The other thing is, I was listening to farming today, and for those urban councillors who haven't got much rural constituency, it's not bad listening to in the morning at 5:45 if you want to pick up some ideas about what's going on in the countryside. So that's something you can all do tomorrow morning. But all listen to on sounds actually. One thing that did come up is the move from the council tax to the credit system now, and it's not in tune with agricultural income, which basically most of us farmers have all our expenses in the spring of the year, first 6 months, and we get hopefully a reward when we harvest whatever we're growing or rearing in the autumn of the year. I just wonder if it would be possible to have community charge on a 6 monthly basis from August through to, or July through to December, and have 6 monthly, six 2 monthly payments all in one go, rather than having any council tax in the spring of the year.
Any comments from our officers on that? John, Chris? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. John Triggs, Director of Resources. So the council tax system, as you say, is set out over a certain number of months, but that's something we can take away and have a look at. We'd like to see the timing of those cash flows, and when payments are made, we can look at whether there's alternative instalment plans that may be able to make for sort of farmers. So that's something we can pick up and take away.
Any more?
Yeah, just one, relatively brief. And it's probably quite relevant to Donnelly's announcements earlier on, that where there is the opportunity for external funding from government, and it comes from varying times as we go through, you know, North Devon Plus, I think early years was the leader projects, wasn't it? Really strong on. And it's just ensuring that as now, when that funding arrives, we get it out there. We publicise it really well. You know, there's plenty of stuff over there. There's going to be in the press and so on. Let's make sure every last penny that's available gets into the rural economy. Because my feeling is that if it gets into the rural economy, it will ultimately stimulate that much more business. It will come back via the council again. There's a multiple benefit all the way around there for a vibrant economy. So let's make sure it works, and it works really well. I know it's quite a challenge, and I know it's a lot of time spent, especially with the varying controls behind it. And the other opportunity, of course, in my mind, is around the biodiversity net gain that we're now tasked with implementing as a council, whether we like it or not, on every planning application that comes through, or pretty well everyone anyway. And let's make sure that rather than just letting the developers do an easy option and just offsetting on a chunk here and there or somewhere out of it, let's try and recirculate that money around the local economy. Let's ensure it has multiple benefits to us. Everyone gains then, and in the long term, we've got a better economy for it.
Thank you very much. That's interesting. Very good. Are there any other members of the committee that wish to ask questions, please? Councillor Bushell, this will be your third.
I don't want to stop other members asking questions, but Mr. Delbridge, you mentioned community tax, which I believe is a reference to something before I was born. But we are reading documents that the government are considering putting in a land tax, which they say is distinct from council tax, which would mean that people would pay for the value of the land underneath their home, which would be an added tax on top. I wonder whether we think that this will adversely affect farmers, bearing in mind that their properties are generally worth a lot of money, and there is generally a larger curtilage towards a farmhouse building, and also maybe Officer Triggs might also put some meat on the bones of whether that is likely to happen. But certainly it's a risk and another tax which the government may wish to add to our burden.
Was that a question?
Yes, it was how is it going to affect if government?
Could I, just, I'm trying to keep to the actual timetable. We have a few minutes left of this section before we, 3 minutes to be precise. Could I just ask maybe 2 members of the panel?
Well, it won't be clear. And say how bad it will be, because I mustn't mention which, so I might mention win the next election, so.
Can I propose we open to questions from those that aren't necessarily on this committee? And also we've got, thank you so much, lots have joined us from
Councillor Jones, that's what I'm doing. I said 2 or 3 minutes, because we have to suspend that rules to do that. Thank you. Is there another member of the panel who would like to comment?
I was just going to say, I mean, I have heard of the potential land tax, but I think it's, I don't know whether it's a wishful thinking or whether it's a real thing that's coming. It would obviously have an impact where land is not making huge amounts of profit for the business on paper at the end of the day. But I think if you drop all land, so that we have huge sliding scale from owning 60,000 outlocking Westminster down to agricultural land as you do the table. So not good in it to come in, but I would hope that agricultural land and permanent agricultural land would be at the lowest end of that tax. All land with the tax, so this building would be taxed based on the property and its value as a building. So agricultural land is obviously at the lowest end of that value.
Thank you very much. With that, we will move on to our next stage of the committee meeting, which requires us to suspend our standing orders to allow non-committee members to ask questions. So I would like to propose.
Officer Triggs allowed to answer. I did mention my name in my question.
Thank you, Chair. At this stage, obviously, we've not seen any detail on those tax changes. I think as been alluded to, it's political thinking, and obviously we'll wait to see what happens after the 4th of July, so when any detail gets out and becomes implemented. So at this stage, there's no comment from the District Council on any changes to the tax system. Thank you.
Thank you. So I move that we suspend standing orders. Thank you. All three members? Thank you. So now we move on. We have some members here from Torridge District Council. We're very pleased to welcome them here tonight. So I expect you to come with some questions. So over to you.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My God, I too used to have a sheepdog. I used to show that. I didn't stay tall and all, but anyway, basically. Yeah, my name's Steve Harding. I'm a district councillor of Hartley Ward, and if you know the geography of our way, we've got one of the biggest farms in the country, and basically, you know, I've had several of my farm and constituents having letters from a transport company saying they won't be picking up the milk because of the state of the roads and that. And I know that, you know, there's nothing that you guys can do or seemingly us, but basically, you know, it's not an easy job being a farmer. So, you know, is there going to be a future of farming? I have a young son that wants to be a farmer, God knows why. And you know, is there going to be any avenues for any of the young entrants, you know, getting into farming? And how do you think that will, in this new current way, be formed?
Can I? Well, first of all, ever since I can remember, and I can reference Barnard and Nix, Farm Planning and Control, 1978. So I'm going back a while, actually. My university tutor was John Nix, who wrote the book. But at that point, his advice then would have been, if you look at the percentage return on capital invested in farming, you will always sell up and invest the money elsewhere. However, for anyone that had done that at that time, with land at around £800 an acre, would be looking back and thinking, I wish I'd left it in the land. It was a lot safer and a much better investment. I think this is something that is quoted time after time. From a return on your investment perspective, it is always pretty poor investing it in land and farming. For a long-term perspective, it is a very different scenario. And I think this is the difference between a rural economy and listening to a professional advisor. I was always told, listen to a professional advisor. You don't have to do what he says. It's not his risk. I've upset enough people now.
I don't quite know how to follow that. There we go. But yes, in respect to your question, I would like to think there's a future in farming. Myself, our family, we're a blended family of five. We have 5 children between us, and the oldest is 16, doing her A levels. what I would say is they see how hard we all work, and they see other opportunities other than farming to make that have, you know, for their income. It will be solely, I think it will be solely dependent on going forward on the support that British farmers have great British public support, probably more now than we've ever had, and that's recognised by the NFU. But for that support, we need to make money. And far too long, farmers have been price takers and not price makers, and that is not sustainable. And when we are subject to the threats of imports, especially with reference to lamb at the moment from Australia and New Zealand, at half the price what we're getting, it does make you think. But I would like to think there is a future, because farmers, regardless of what some people think, farmers, it's not in their interest to ruin the countryside. They're, you know, they're proud people, they're resilient people, but we have to make money.
Back to Torridge, Mr. Members. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Phil Pennington. I represent a rural ward in Milton Keynes, if you know where that is. It's out in Wales. We've got more sheep than we have people. I try to pull the wool over their eyes and then vote for them. I would ask the question, why do we talk about farm subsidies? Surely it's always been a cheap food policy we've had in this country, and we've been put on the back foot ever since we talked about subsidies. Everybody thinks farmers are getting a handout. And I would also like to celebrate what farming has done, because I'm 70 days tonight from my 70th birthday. It's a strange thing. And I've been clearing out my own desks and burning and getting rid of all the evidence. And I got my first milk check out, 11.7 pence a litre. Now, there's no dairy farmers on the panel tonight, but I think is there dairy farmers here tonight? What are you getting, 35, 36? A bit more than that. Yeah, about 38p. 38p a litre. Just over 3.5 times. That was 47 years ago when I started. And my mother went and bought a house in Bideford for £10,000 to live. And that house this week on the market is £190,000. That house price has gone up 19 times when the milk price has not gone up 3.5 times. What a great job British farming has done. And how I feel sometimes it's being trampled on by some of the press that's gone on all about the green agendas, etc., etc. We provided a cheap food policy for this country for far too long. And I don't think we've had the vision and leadership to put that truly across to our population. And I'm alarmed that we're talking about now taking our national production down from 58% down to, I think, about 50% if I see some of the figures now through the situation. And I just wondered how you feel that as farmers, and I wonder how our urban population would see that in the other way around from reality, because I don't think we are celebrating enough. I do worry about the mental health of one or two of our farmers at the present moment as well. I wish we had somebody representing the mental health side, or ABI, to talk about what's going through farming at the moment. So I'm not there, but I basically wish that we could be on the front foot for farming, celebrating the great job that British farming has done down the years, rather than having the carpet pulled from underneath us at the present moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, first of all, absolutely wholeheartedly agree with you. Food has never been any cheaper than it is now. It's at the cheapest point it has ever been. It is probably also some of the finest quality from British farming as well. So I think we've got to remember that. And actually, we do need to celebrate that. The other bit you mentioned, the word at the beginning, subsidy. You haven't heard me speak that word all evening at all. Because as far as I'm concerned, subsidies to farming disappeared around about the beginning of, not BPS, but SPS. That vanished at that point. And prior to that, the arable aid system, all of that type of thing was there. There have been no subsidies for food production for 25 years now. They disappeared, they vanished in that era. And I think it's been a real problem that that perception of supported food production has been perpetuated continually. In reality, what farmers have done is they took some money that arrived through the European system at the time for land management and adherence to quality and levels of control. And they actually subsidised producing cheap food for the population with it. Those with any sense at the time should have taken and bought themselves some houses and invested in them, or at least some more farms or something. And so they could have put some solar farms on them or something like that. That is the reality. And I think we've got to be quite clear. Farming has not been subsidised. Actually, farmers have subsidised food production. And when that changes, food, and just noticeable, the chief executive of Waitrose at a conference only a week or so ago stated he felt the era of cheap food was now over. You're going to have to start appreciating it and pay for what you have.
I've not got much more to add on the back of what Robin said. He's dead right. I personally don't like the word subsidies. I think it gives off the wrong impression. And I would say that if you had all the farmers in North Devon in a big area together and you asked them, would they sooner have the support payment or a fair price for what they produce to give them a good return? I'm pretty certain I know what they would say.
Just adding my agreement to all that's been said before. I mean, just a couple of stats, and Robin's very good on stats, but I was told that, as a result, after the 47 Ag Act, when we wanted production, and everybody can remember exactly what it was like to starve and be on rationing after the war. We then spent, the average household income spent 40% of the month, their household income on food. Now it's down to about 7 or 8. We've lost that fact how cheap food is. And civil servants in Whitehall, only up to about 4 or 5 years ago, had said, don't worry about food production, don't worry about food supply, we can bring it in from wherever they are, in the world, wherever we can. My neighbour said, that's why we can import food from third world countries, because they need foreign income and they need foreign currency, because then they buy their arms and their JCBs and their land over in England, decent civil war, I think, what they're trying. He's putting out that just, but they ain't too far from the truth. So then, if we follow that along now, food and global warming, they still assume we can bring it in from wherever. But global warming will have its effect on other parts of the world. And yes, we've seen what it's like this winter, and we think it's to do with global warming. I have no reason to doubt that at all. But there's 2 countries in the world that have got water supply that is plentiful enough for food production. It's us in New Zealand. And water, I was told about 10 years ago, will be more precious than oil one day. And living in Top Vexel, where we get sand beaches and stuff all over the sky, you tend to think, what the hell are they on about? But just think about that, and plentiful, cheap food from around the world might not be there in the future.
Thank you very much. Add something to
Robin,
just to add something to that around the subsidies, and we're straight on to talking about food. But in reality, we've reached an era now where it has become important to support environmental management and a good quality environment. But I have not heard anyone say that that's an environmental subsidy. Everyone says it's an environmental support payment and a management payment. So what's the difference? That previous stuff was apparently a subsidy for farmers, but environmental management isn't. Let's be clear, if we want the environment managed in specific ways that is dictated, that is not a subsidy, that is a support, that is a management payment for doing what is expected. And let's be clear, that can then be a contribution to business as well as to the environment. Environment doesn't come cheap.
Just to touch on the other point that the councillor made, mental health in farming is a big issue at the moment, and the RABI, the Rural Agricultural Development Institute, and the FCM, the Farm Community Network, are doing quite a lot on a day-to-day basis with individuals. There's county chapters, there's county individuals, and local people that will go around. There's also the market chaplain that goes around and spends a lot of time with people. The issues around mental health, I think, are not singular. I think it's a build-up of lots of different things, and different people have their own issues, whether that's money, or whether it's the status of the farm, or whether it's the value of their stock, or the rain. And so you can't say there's one cure for mental health issues in farming, but farmers are quite self-contained, and so don't often talk to people about it. But it's good to have, your neighbour is looking over the gate. Sometimes stopping and chatting for 10 minutes can always help. But there is support networks out there, but people don't necessarily always pick up on them.
Thank you very much. I suppose.
Two more from Norwich. Thank you. Thank you for the name.
Chair, thank you. Councillor Simon Newton, I represent Wingfield Ward on Norwich District Council. I also run a very small flock of exmoors on the banks of the River Torridge, where I'm also a riparian owner. Picking up on Mr. Delbridge's last point, namely water. Both our councils are very focused at the moment on pollution, especially pollution connected with what the public see, and that is sewage discharge, etc. However, we also know, and I'm also a member of the Torridge Rivers Association, we also know that the real killer upriver is actually nitrates coming as our byproducts. How do we encourage, persuade, bring on side the agricultural world to better respect our watercourses?
Who would like to lead on that?
I think that's
But it's a good question, yes. Within Norwich, there's a big source of agricultural property there, as well as the sewage streams. We've been working in the catchment for 20 years with organisations like West Country Rivers Trust and with the Wildlife Trust. We've been taking catchment at a time, and it's putting in the right kind of investment, again supporting landowners to dig yard infrastructure, separate the clean water from the dirty water, so that reducing their storage risk, supporting where we can in terms of the swim store. So it's hand-holding, advice, supporting. That's really how we're working to bring one side. As you say, nitrates, it's trying to install good husbandry, because they're paying good money for that fertilizer. They see it come off the field and go into the rivers. So it's their money that's going on, as well as the soil that goes with it. So it points out the good economic sense of that good husbandry as well. And I think there's an opportunity as well for us to take good kind of modern look, if you like, on the way that we manage nutrients generally. Probably 50% or so, 55% self-reliant on food. So means that all the food comes in, it goes around us, and goes out the other end. There's another half of the nutrients there that's not being reused, recycled, or back into the land. Yet still, we buy ammonium nitrate from South Africa or from Russia or Ukraine or whatever. We bring that in, we apply it to the land. So I think we need to think much more about post-economy, circular economies and how we sort of work that land. And that means we deal with those nutrients, sorry. But that means, again, that's less leaking out of the economy and actually keeping it in. So, you know, we'd be advocating much more approaches like that to work with landowners, looking at nutrient trading, ways to recapture those nutrients and reapply them. And so they're not getting into rivers, they're sort of being ingredients to producing good food. And the soil condition is getting better and better all the time rather than being lost. And I think that just makes good economic sense. And I'm sure the dairy farmers are willing to do that because it plays to their values about growing good food and doing it well.
Can I just add that? I think, thank you, Councillor. I think that a lot of farmers absolutely do respect it, but it comes down to, in my mind, two things: money and time. So to concrete out your yard or to put roofing to get the rainwater off and separate out, you've then got to go through the planning process and you've got to finance it. And to even get catchments to farming officer out and support you, it could be 6 months. And then you may be into the wrong time of year, so then you're effectively looking at 12 months. So I think that there's a lot of education of farmers and there's a lot of brilliant support out there for farmers, but nothing in farming is quick. It can't be by the very nature of farming. So there's a big drive towards it. I think you'll see changes, but it may be over the course of the next 5 years, not the next 5 weeks.
Can I just add a couple bits to that? Go on, Andy, you first.
We did a calculation a few years ago, putting a tank, to try and get through this clearly, that kind of investment into the yards and the roots. It's going to be about 19 years. So it's not a cheap business. You know, we can get £300,000 out to the CSF and try and speed that process up. But at the end of the day, it's going to take at least 30 to 40 minutes to describe it.
Could I just say, before you do that, I'm conscious of the time. I am keen to open this up for the general public to ask questions. And after Robin has spoken, I think there's one more member from Torridge to ask a question, and then I'd like to open it up for that, please.
Thanks. A lot of this is around monitoring. And we know that you can't solve a problem until you admit there is one. And I think even those of us in agriculture admitted we were going probably down the wrong route. Cheap fertilizers, plant breeding on the basis that the more nitrogen you gave it, plant breeding companies were breeding stuff for that. The more nitrogen you gave it, the better it was being, the nitrogen was cheap. That's intensification of agriculture on the basis of cheap food. We know there were some problems and agriculture is addressing them. But there's two fronts to that. One is the external use of land and so on. And the schemes that are in place at the moment, the management, the opportunities, the varying systems. And we've looked at varying stuff around the bigger ones with water authorities, smaller ones around the grants, the capital grants, and the land use strategies through the likes of the SFI are all out there to benefit that. We can gain from them. Unfortunately, there's still a challenge. The capital grants are there on infrastructure. A lot of our infrastructure hasn't been supported on farms for a very long time. It still seems to me ludicrous that I can have 100% tax relief on buying a new tractor and fertilizer spreader, but I can't on putting up a new building or a new slurry store or something that will stop pollution. It seems that ridiculous situation of that lack of joined up thinking. And I think there's an opportunity to address that and ensure our land management and our infrastructure needs are linked much more closely.
Thank you, Robert. Was a member from Torridge? Yeah.
Yes, I'm Teresa Tinsley and I'm new here and I represent Bideford North, which is all urban actually. But I'm struggling a bit because I've heard all your problems and I really identify with them, but we've got a problem because we've got a new government coming in 6 weeks' time. We think it's going to be a new government. So I think it's very difficult to get an idea of what the solutions are or what the future is going to be without talking about politics a little bit. So I wanted to ask you, I don't know what Labour Party policy is on farming. So I wanted to, I don't know if there's going to be anything in the manifesto. I wanted to know if you've had, particularly the NFU, if you've had any discussions at the top level of the Labour Party, because they don't seem to me to be a party, and you know, some of my best friends go to the Labour Party. My daughter's a Labour councillor, but they don't seem to me to be a party which is focused on rural issues and farming.
Thank you, Councillor Tinsley. The question, in response to your question, I was with the president of the NFU last week, Tom Bradshaw. Our organisation is always in constant touch with the government. With respect to the Labour, Labour Party, yes, all I can say is we talk to them, but we don't really know where we are. We don't. I don't know that they know themselves.
Chair, can I comment? Sorry, came on Executive Council, North Devon Council. I think we do need to be a little bit careful because we are in a pre-election period. Although not in the formal PERDA period yet, there are obviously some heightened sensitivities around getting into the area of politics as well with the general election coming up. What I would say outside of that is I think whatever government is coming in, whether that be Conservative, Labour or any other party, I think this is a good opportunity actually to start putting down some bullet points and saying actually what do we want for our area from any new government that's coming in to help agriculture. And it's a good opportunity to set ourselves up for after the 4th of July to start lobbying whatever government is in place to put forward those points. So it's a good opportunity still to have this debate, but I think at the moment, none of us know what's in any of the manifestos because none of them are released yet.
Thanks a lot for that. We have two more councillors from Torridge, is it? Can you read? I think Councillor Branton, you were first. Can you be quiet? Okay.
Right, well, after that party political broadcast by the Liberals, I want to say that Labour did bring in the 1947 regulations, which actually helped farmers enormously at the time. That's a historic fact. And we do know what we're going to do when we get into power. But my question is actually about subsidies or support. I totally take your point about it should be called support. And it's to say that the EU has a system of subsidies that's much better than the ones you're getting at the moment, whether you like them or not. But they are doing it on the basis of the fact that it's to support the farmers with global fluctuations and the difficulties and the adverse weather problems that are occurring. And that is their initiative and their intention. They don't actually just cut it down to something supplying farmers with a bit of a top up for their income. But the thing is, there's a big issue about cheap food, isn't there? Because I'm Annie Brenton from Bideford West, and Bideford has several food banks. We have several food banks. We never had them before. My question was about the subsidies, okay? But we have several food banks, and we also have the second lowest wage in the country, I believe. So what would happen to the people who can't afford this really expensive food? We need to have some compromise. I completely take your point about food and that it's not being sold at the right price. It should be. But we can't afford at the same time to remove all support so that people who are really poor, and I don't know if you've noticed it, but there are some in this country who are really poor and they haven't got housing and all the rest of it. What are they going to do if the food is so expensive that we go back to the 1930s?
Be brief, please.
I've finished.
Yes. Would you like somebody to attempt an answer to that one?
Well, it was only last week or week before on, and it's still on Sounds, on Farmer Today, where they went around Europe and nearly all the comments from the farmers that they interviewed in Lisbon, in Spain, were virtually the same as what you've heard here tonight. They're all in a dysfunctional supply chain. They're not getting their fair share of the cake being passed back to them. And if you really want to know where Wild Foods today are, we're saying on what we're saying, is probably look at Tesco profits.
You capitalism.
Thank you. And we have the final forage councillor.
No. Is it working? Chair Councillor Hunkin, District Councillor for Sheffield and Blantyre Wards. Very brief and just a question. What would you like to see from the next government to support farmers and the rural economy? Very brief summary.
Right. Yeah, I'm willing to have a crack at that. First thing is listen. Listen and understand the issues. And I think realistically, whatever government, and I can't preempt what's going to happen, whoever's there and in place is going to have the same issues to deal with as anyone else. I'm an independent. I'm definitely apolitical as anyone can get probably in this room. So I think they have to listen. They have to start understanding that it's not about single issue approaches of any sort, realistically. And I think confusing the likes of a cheap food policy with potentially an economic policy that's causing poverty problems in areas is pretty disingenuous myself. I think there are two different things, and any government has got to address that situation and deal with those issues separately and understand that they are intrinsically linked ultimately, but they're separate issues. So it's to start to listen, to understand the value of food and to understand the value of the environment in which we produce that food, and to ensure that in production of anything, whether it's a car, whether it's food, whether it's your bicycle, anything like that, needs an element of profit attached to it. Now, if you look at water companies, maybe you suggest at the moment profit has become sort of out of control. But there needs to be an element of profitability to maintain viable businesses. So an understanding of the rural economy, linking it to an urban economy as part of the greater political value. And I think we have a challenge to educate anyone that's there in place, especially where we've had an incumbent administration this long. Who knows, we might get them back again.
Yeah.
I can't preempt anything.
Yes, thank you. On the back of what Councillor Mills just said, the organisation I represent has its own manifesto, which all the parties will be made aware of, our key asks, and all I'm replicating what Robin said, that we just urge them to listen. My organisation represents a massive lot of farmers. They are well placed. There are other organisations around, but my organisation are fully aware of the problems facing us all. And yes, I urge all parties to listen. We are an apolitical organisation.
To me, again, about listening, I think we've got a problem with diseases, TB, and things like that we haven't even spoken about tonight, which have dire consequence to the economy, and just an understanding of animal health and welfare, that it does cost to look after our animals the way that we've been told to against the competition. So it's unfair competition.
British farming is and has always been gold plated. We do everything to the highest standards, and when you compare us to other European countries, we're far above other countries. So we need to value British farming forces.
One point that, one of the points I think is positive that's come out of our own now support system rather than the agricultural policy is that actually DEFRA are listening and are engaging and have developed developed the schemes in a co-design way. And I think it's very important that they carry on doing that, listening to the farmers, listening to the people that actually trying to implement those things. Yeah, that's a positive from that.
Again, as I imagine, apolitical, as much as anybody, it had been the ESCO designation, but was within the 25-year environment plan, which has been really lived up to, which was about not exporting our problems abroad. So I'd rather see trade agreements reviewed so that they were taking from areas that were producing to the same standards as the UK, in which case, British farmers are not being compromised by those cheaper prices from my side. And it means we're not exporting our problems out for us to make it less than the
I would like the next government, whatever colour it is, to think beyond the next electoral cycle. Farming, agriculture, rural economy is a long-term game. And sometimes thinking in the 5 years stints is no longer.
Very good point, thank you. We now open up to questions from members of the public. Please. And they always say worried that's running out of time. Yeah.
I will shout. Okay, my name's Ron Skinner. I went to agricultural college. I studied horticulture. No horticulture here at all. That's really disappointing. But that sector, which used to supply Constable Pannier Market, Braunton had its own horticultural supplies, for instance. There are sectors, nothing. I'm a senior lecturer at Duchy College in horticulture. Why are we not talking about horticulture? Any answers?
Probably have a guess, and I'm no horticulturalist, I'm an agriculturalist. But horticulture has suffered those major pressures, same as here. It's been really cheap to import that glasshouse produced stuff from Spain, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And if you go in any supermarket, look at where the labels say, and the majority of what you see is your fruit and veg that's sat on the shelves will be coming from abroad. It will be produced to a lesser standard than we do on the whole. It's sucking up huge water resources in those countries. And yet we're prepared to bypass that because it's there and it's cheap enough. And I think it's the same problems that we've faced in agriculture. And yes, absolutely agree. I see the scale of what should be scrubbed out in areas of this country. It just seems fundamentally wrong. And to my mind, yes, I link horticulture in with this in the same thing. The cheap supply chain controlled realistically at the top by 5 major supermarket buyers, provide a race to the bottom for price. And after all, as one prominent American politician said some time ago, agriculture and horticulture can be lumped under the same thing. It's an incredible situation that both of them buy everything they want at retail, sell everything they produce at wholesale, and pay the haulage both ways. No other business does that at all. And it's still true today.
May I answer that a little bit?
Yes, go ahead.
I have a badge here that says no farmers, no food. Quite a lot of what I've heard, and I do support farming, quite a lot of what I've heard is reminiscent of my time at agricultural college. You guys drive around in your Range Rovers. Me as a horticulturalist was on my bicycle.
I wish.
Yeah.
It's indeed true, whether you've got a subsidy or what have you. And my support for farming is conditional. So my neighbour owns half the parkland, that peninsula. I do not support his type of farming. Full stop. I support small farmers with sort of small herds, etc., because risk to the environment, etc., is smaller. Something happens with that big lagoon on the Heartland Peninsula, it's massive, the implication. And so when you guys are driving up the road and pushing me off on my bicycle, or I'm told by the haulage contractors that basically I shouldn't be on the road, just think about that. That road belongs to me before it belongs to that haulage contractor or that farmer. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Phil Hussey. I am the Lib Dem parliamentary candidate for Torridge and Tavistock, but my question is not political. It's really following on from what you said earlier. Where would you want to be in 20 years' time? And a follow-up, how do you think we should get there?
Thank you for the question. Good question. I would like to be doing what I'm doing now, if I'm able to. That is sustainably farming in North Devon, providing great British food, safe British food of the highest standard in the world for the great British public.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment on that?
Well, I've already done the approach. My son became my boss on my farm at 23. I gave him control of it. So there's the first move. My family has been farming at the farm I'm on at the moment for 8 generations. We go back in North Devon to Doomsday Book. So I'd rather hope that future generations will feel comfortable with farming. I'm not a factory farm. I'm not a big industrial size place, but I'm quite proud of what we have there. We have an area of countryside that thousands of people want to come and visit and look at, that is quite well known throughout the world. I keep varying pieces of animals up there, varying animals there that I really don't need to, that are absolutely unprofitable. Why do I keep 2 herds of Exmoor ponies? Basically, because if I remove them, an awful lot of people would say, why have they gone? I think the top of the list for the Exmoor National Park, for the one thing they want to see, is an Exmoor pony and a red deer. Now, neither of them have any profit to the farmers at all, but they're both still there. And we're both stupid enough to keep them there. So let's be realistic. It's not all about profit for the vast majority of the farming in those areas. It's ensuring that we have a sustainable business that understands the countryside, and that I have a river that goes along the bottom of my farm that is not like the one that flows past the seat of our democracy. I'm not afraid to go and paddle in it.
Yeah, I'd like to see what David mentioned there just now, for us producing sustainably produced food in North Devon, providing landscape that everybody would like to visit. And it might surprise you over there that we don't all lead millionaire lifestyles. I went on a holiday last week, and believe it or not, I went to Duxborough, because you can travel a lot of miles in this world and not find anywhere better. Come over the back there, it's sustainably friendly, owned by somebody in this room, and you could not have anything better.
Thank you, Pete, for that. If there are no other public questions, or there are,
Thank you. Adam Stanbury, I'm an organic dairy farmer from near Ilfracombe. Firstly, I want to congratulate North Devon District Council for putting on this event tonight. It's really good that you are taking seriously what we all do and asking for opinions on how to improve it in the future. I would like to echo the panel's views on the planning system. Although there's nothing much wrong with it, the speed
speed of delivery would be very valued in our industry. A couple of points, and not really questions perhaps, but the one problem I see, I supply milk to my processor, who in turn supplies it to pretty much every retailer in the UK, and it's very well known that milk is sold in a supermarket as a loss leader. The supermarket makes negligible, if any, profit. The processor makes a tiny profit, and the farmer hopefully makes a tiny profit as well, if we're lucky. I see lots of supermarkets in existence in North Devon, and they keep popping up, maybe to match the consumer, but more competition. They provide free parking and taking business out of the high street and local communities. I ask more to the district councillors, is there any mechanism that could be put in place to put more, in effect, taxation on these supermarkets and offer that to the local shops to enable us to sell our products more locally, rather than my milk going all the way to Bridgewater or Bristol and then distributed all over the country. I'd much rather sell it in my local shops. That's not easy to achieve, but is there an incentive that the council can do to encourage local shops to do better? And the other question, probably for the panel, is what do you see that North Devon District Council could do to help the youth of our industry go into our businesses? Because there is a shortage of labour, and it's not perhaps the most sexy industry for our kids to be going into. My eldest daughter sees me as a primary producer. She's doing geography at school, and she comes home and says, "Oh, Daddy, you're a primary producer." I'm quite proud to be a primary producer, but after I have a discussion about secondary, tertiary, quaternary work that we may do, then she is quite surprised. So what can we do to, and North Devon District Council help to encourage our kids into our industry?
Thank you for that. Could I ask our officers to comment on the first part of the question, please? Yeah.
Just in relation to the first part of the question about taxation, taxation is unfortunately a national system, so it will probably won't surprise you to learn that there is very little that we can do about that. But in terms of what can we do about encouraging people to shop in our high streets, then I think there is something we can do about that. And you'll see in Barnstable, for instance, the projects we've had underway around future high streets, the pannier market, renovation, etc. So I think there's an awful lot we can do about making the place more attractive to people to come in. And I think one of the points that I picked up from the earlier discussion as well was about buy local campaigns. And I think district councils, through the way that we've got through social media and communications channels, should be throwing, should be throwing our weight behind those campaigns more than we probably do. We do it, but I think we should do it in a coordinated way, probably with the NFU and other organisations as well.
Thank you, Ken. Over to the panel for the second part of the question. Okay.
Thank you. What can the district council do for young people? I think the biggest thing is housing. Obviously, some farmers have access to barns that they can convert, etc., etc. We all know that housing is very expensive in our area, and affordable rural housing for local people, for young people, is a must. What I'm about to say is not pointing the finger at North Devon Council, but it's more a successive government thing. It does frustrate me that large developers of housing estates are supposed to put in a percentage of affordable local housing. And the crux of the matter is they do viability assessments, and those viability assessments come out, it's not viable. My family done a small local development a few years ago with a local builder, only 12 houses. We provided some 106 money for the local community. We provided 3 starter homes pegged at a very low price. We provided 2 rental homes. That is on a 12-site development. It really frustrates me and angers me that these big developers are getting away with what they do.
Unfortunately, that was happening quite well.
Welcome, if very briefly, because I absolutely share your concerns and absolutely share your frustrations with that. I mean, planning housing is probably a subject for another day, because we could probably talk about it all evening. What I will mention though are CLTs, community land trusts, because that is a way of providing rural housing that the community wants, and it's 100% affordable. And I think both authorities, North Devon and Norwich, are really supportive of those organisations and really supportive of those schemes, and they will continue to be so. In North Devon, we've got, I think, well, in Norwich, I think there's a couple of schemes, one in Attlethorpe and one in Holsley, I think that have come through into fruition, bricks on the ground. In North Devon, we've got some where the builders are just about to move in. And we will continue to support those schemes in Ilfracombe, in Bullock, in the rural areas. But probably the point for us to note is, this is a session perhaps on housing and planning, especially around the agricultural community, but another day perhaps.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Just one comment on that, and can I throw the question back at the audience there? Actually, North Devon, by default, realistically, is now likely to be reviewing, it will now be reviewing its local plan. And I would suggest that every single person in this room make sure they put a response in on the basis of rural and local housing to that plan, and make sure it's vocal, and every farming organisation as well. Because historically, the most significant problem with developing local plans has been the lack of people responding to consultation. This is your opportunity. Make it vocal, make it clear. And then as councillors, we'll have to sit down and listen and do our very best to enact what's there on paper.
I believe there was one more. This will be the last question. Just I'll pick 2. Okay, I will take the 2, and that will have to be it. Gone over our time a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Andrew Cook, farmer from Georgetown. Can I thank Peter for looking after my sheep last week when he was on holiday. It's very kind of you. I've got first-hand experience of the ponds and trying to get planning. We're encouraged by the government to diversify and help the wildlife and do a bit for the environment. So we thought we'd try and go for a pond. We started last November, the process. Here we are near the end of May. We haven't even got to parish yet. We've got to now do an ecological survey and a wildlife report. There's some money available from FIPL, which is farming in protected landscapes, but I think most of that will be taken up with admin, surveys, and planning. So, and what councillors that please.
I don't know the specific case, so it's really difficult to comment on your particular circumstances. What I'll say is, again, I've made a point here about planning. Can we provide more advice? I think Caroline mentioned the advice that was put out by both planning authorities last year. It needs updating, I know, because there have been changes to permitted development rights just recently and guidance. But can we put out more advice proactively? Can we speed up the system? It is quite difficult because this is a national system, but is there anything we can do locally to do that? And can we be more consistent in the decision making? I've made those points. I'm more than happy to pick up your specific case afterwards if you like. But without knowing the detail, it's really difficult to say specifically from your point. But I'll certainly make those notes.
Thank you. Thanks.
Don't worry, I don't like to stand my own voice. This is.
And your name, please?
My name is Robert Jones. My question is,
I'm afraid it's more to the council officers than to the panel out there. How practical would it be, and this may not be at district level, for when you apply for contracts, any catering you supply, to be able to buy local as well? Buying local and having campaign is great, but I think you have no idea of the positive effect for farmers to see you also supporting us by trying to buy local, because there's no question that we have widespread food poverty in this country and a real problem producing environmentally sensitive food.
Members of North Devon Council sitting around the table won't be aware of this yet, but they will shortly be looking at the procurement strategy that's coming to them. And one of the criteria in that procurement strategy is about buying local. Now, unfortunately, we are a small district council, so we don't have massive catering contracts. I can't remember the last time we did put a contract out for catering. But for other contracts that we procure, and it's not just agricultural, in the agricultural sphere, for instance, building works, etc., we certainly do try and bring in local contractors and buy local. As I said, the procurement strategy that members will be looking at in the coming months certainly has that as a criteria to put within our procurements. I'm pretty sure Torridge's, I can't speak for the Torridge members, I'm pretty sure Torridge has a procurement strategy that talks about social value as well and buying local. So we try and do our best. What we can do, though, is lobby organisations such as Devon County Council who have much bigger contracts, school contracts and things like that to do exactly the same.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm now moving on to the next stage. We reinstate standing orders. Okay, all agreed. Okay. Thanks, Kelly, for keeping an eye on me. I'm now going to ask Councillor Trinos, because I believe he's been avidly taking some notes here. And the next item is actions and next steps to be agreed by the committee. So,
thanks. Yeah, allow me just when we were planning the meeting, you thought this would be fairly easy, it'd be half a dozen things we can just. But there's been so much stuff. I've got like a page and a half of scribble. Can I suggest that what we do, rather than me read it out, or attempt to read it anyway, is to perhaps. Obviously, it'll be circulated in minutes, but if you'd like a copy of whatever I've come up with, which isn't the official record, that's been done by Kelly in the corner here. I'm happy to email it to anybody who lets me have their email address. But that isn't to say, even though I've written it down, that we can do it. It's just to say that somebody's asked us for it. Is that okay?
Yes. To bring forward to the next available committee meeting of the Policy Development Committee, isn't it? So that we can look at that. Are you all happy with that approach? I think you've probably all given your email addresses on arrival. No? No. Well, we need.
Anybody wants it?
Kelly has said if you come and give your email addresses to her, that'd be great. Right. I think it's been a brilliant evening, and I'm sure you all agree with me. It's really, really useful. I've learned so much tonight. Really good. I'd like to thank all the public for coming, and our members that have contributed in the preparation of this meeting, especially lead member Liz here to my right. But most of all, I'd like to thank the panel. I think that their expert comments and have been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
I think I've got this working. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Liz has said. I'm very pleased with the panel that agreed to come. You've been very, very useful to us. I think you've informed the general public a lot more about what's involved in farming and how we can
integrate with the local economy. I just want to do a quick straw poll. Can you put your hands up if you found this meeting interesting and informative, please? Great, thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Oh, you
Thank you very much, and I formally close the meeting at 8:31. Thank you.